corporate parenting, which will be held as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is practical following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting either from the Council chambers or from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to a silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting. In respect of cameras, I'd be grateful if members could keep them on for the full duration of the meeting. This is part of a trial to test how well this works. Those speaking may switch their microphones on at that point, but I would ask that, with the exception of myself as the chairperson, at all other times you keep your microphone switched off, as this will help to minimize any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Whether in the chamber or remote, if any members or officers wish to raise a point or a question, they should press the hands up icon at the top right hand of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive the request. Please lower your hands once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from the Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meetings, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I would also ask the officer to introduce themselves and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure their microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use, please. I will now proceed to agenda businesses. Councillor Gebbie, you have your hand up. Did you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much. I just wish to give my apologies to the committee. I've been called into an urgent meeting from 10 o'clock this morning, so it seems ridiculous to try and have two different chair people throughout the meeting, which is why I've asked Councillor Farr to do so. Thanks very much, Councillor Farr.
Thank you, Councillor Gebbie. So going to the item number 1, apologies for absence, please. Do we have any? I cannot see any hands up, so we'll proceed. Any declaration of interest, please? Councillor Jane Gebbie, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's in order to give Councillor Spanswick's apologies, as he has a prejudicial interest, which is why he's not here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair. Can I declare a personal interest on the matters of looked after children? Sorry, I can't remember which number it is. Sorry, if you bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Apologies. It's 3.1.2 on the second report. Thank you.
That item number 5, housing pathway for care experienced children and young people, is it?
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Good, did I see your hand go up as well, gone back down?
Don't worry about it, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the approval of minutes. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. So can I pass on to item number 4, corporate parenting and development?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Steve Berry, and I'm the Corporate Parenting and Participation Officer for Bridgend County Borough Council. The purpose of this report is an update on the 4 areas of corporate parenting development. Firstly, establishing a shared vision for corporate parenting responsibilities. Secondly, establishing a governance structure that supports the strategic and the operational approach to corporate parenting. Thirdly, establishing a corporate parenting performance framework. And finally, establishing a care experience forum to provide a voice for our care experience children and young people. So over the last quarter, I think the most important thing to share with members is the responsibilities that are provided to all of us to celebrate the achievements of our children and young people. And for the first time, we have actually celebrated those achievements of our young people within education this last quarter. We had a dinner on the 21st of September with the Deputy Minister of Social Services from Welsh Government, along with council dignitaries, board members, and more especially 26 young people and their chosen guests as well. The event was not about highlighting young people and getting them up the front. It was an appropriate way to make them feel valued and recognised that we as corporate parents understood the efforts that they had made in education, and therefore we celebrated them, and hopefully that's something we'll be able to support in the future. Moving on to the second area of development is establishing a governance around corporate parenting. The development has been undertaken over the last year, and what we are looking at the moment is action planning and trying to focus our priority areas and understand how we're going to measure the parenting responsibilities that we have of our children and young people. So over the next quarter, I will be able to piece together the draft report for corporate parenting for the past year and looking forward to the future. And within that, we will look at the governance going forward. That also includes Area 3, which is the performance framework, which is looking at how we're actually going to measure the data that we have on our children and young people, and look at some of the difficult questions of how we are able to measure those bits of information that we can't quite grasp at the moment. And then finally, to share with members is the Youth Forum for Care Experienced Young People. You'll recall that we had a contract with TGP Cymru for 12 months with an option to extend to 18 months. As a result of the success of the first 12 months, there's been a decision to move forward and have the final 6 months added on due to the co-production of our strategy with the young people, actually launching our strategy and fully involved in our work, and lots of plans to be able to share with yourselves in the future of our views, wishes and feelings of our young people. So that's very, very important. And the other point to add is that that contract will then finish its 18 months right at the end of the regional contract for advocacy. So then there is an option of buy-in regionally, and that will be posed at that point. And that's the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'm going to open up for questions, and thank you for the report. My mic was off, so apologies. Can I bring Councillor Gebbie in first of all, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I need to firstly formally move the report because I'm more than happy to do so. But I think the thing that I need to say and to make members aware of is all our plans we wouldn't be able to achieve half of them without our stakeholders' involvement. And I think we need to place on record their engagement with us and their support of us in our aims and aspirations. It's not just a council responsibility. We might be the lead stakeholder, but unless all stakeholders get involved, then that's no good to the rest of our children looked after, or looked after children, dependent on your view of terminology currently. And I think that's really important. The opportunities that we're able to offer them through our stakeholders is immeasurable, because it's the value that we're placing on them as young people to go on and achieve. I think what's really interesting to note at our Achievements Award evening, one of my guests on my table, I have to say, or I should say, I was a guest on their table. She'd achieved 20 GCSEs. That's an amazing amount of that's an amazing amount of work, and she still works part-time, you know, to support her own aims and aspirations about where she wants to go. So I was very inspired by the young people that were in attendance, and some of them have had the most difficult circumstances. And I think that's really important that we recognise them, because just as we would our own children. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gebbie. Can I bring Councillor Good in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Steve, for the report. Thank you for the update. I always fully support the work that we do as corporate parents, and I think that is really important. But I just wanted to ask, we're all facing very difficult conversations around the budget at the moment, and I was wondering if Steve could give us a bit of an update on where we are in terms of ensuring that our services with our cared for children are being done in an efficient manner and with good regard to the public purse, so that we can ensure that we are delivering those services, but also being very aware of the budgetary constraints that we currently face.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Good. I'm going to ask Claire to respond to you, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm Claire Marchant, Corporate Director, Social Services and Wellbeing. And yeah, thanks to Steve for the report, and thanks for the question, Councillor Good. In terms of the budgetary position around care experienced children, it is a very challenging area of our business. We've got two papers this morning, which probably bring that to light. Actually, the paper around housing pathways and the paper around fostering this morning are both areas where we need to do things differently, I would suggest, and in the most cost-effective way, as well as achieving the best outcomes for children and young people. The key pressure that we experience in this budget area is around what we call placements, what children would call their home. Obviously, as corporate parents and with our partners, we need to ensure that children for whom we have parenting responsibility have a home which is safe, which is warm, which they can achieve their well-being outcomes, their educational outcomes, and where they are loved. The best place for that is usually, if they can't remain for the reasons we know with their own parents or family, is in foster care. And we've always got a big drive to recruit more foster carers, and Alex will talk about that later this morning. There are some children whose care plan is to be in residential care. Residential care is the right outcome for some children for a period of their lives, but there is a real challenge in terms of availability of residential care of the right quality and quantum, and it's also a very costly option in terms of independent residential care. And in Bridgend, we've seen an increase in the numbers in independent residential care over the last couple of years, in common with the rest of Wales. So we're certainly not the only authority. I would suggest, it would be the exception who would be an authority that hasn't seen a significant increase in that area. And all authorities are really trying to recruit more and more foster carers, so that when residential is the right option, it's the right option because that's the care plan rather than because of availability. We're doing some really innovative things here in Bridgend. Members of the committee will have seen the press release about the opening of Meadows View, Golygfa Ddolig, and that's a really positive development, not just because it's in-house provision and more cost effective, but also because the model there is about very in-depth assessment of the needs of young people before they go into a long-term placement. So there's both emergency and short-term up to a year provision there, where those needs can really be understood therapeutically, so that the care planning, that the placement is the right one. So colleagues who make these decisions do so very much with a mind to cost, but the market, and I use that word because it is a market in terms of independent residential particularly, is incredibly challenging and very costly.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Good, did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Claire.
Okay. Can I bring in Councillor Timothy Thomas, please?
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question, really, about the celebratory dinner. I recognise the concept behind it, to celebrate and recognise the achievements of young people. Just wondering, what engagement did we do with the young people, just to see if this was the best way of celebrating their achievements? And did we record any feedback following on from the event to see, if it was a success, if this was something valued by the young people and something that we should carry forward into the future?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Steve, you okay? Yeah.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Put your mic up behind the laptop.
Beg your pardon. Sorry, members. Sorry, Councillor Thomas. In answer to your question, yes, we did inform the celebratory event on the views, wishes and feelings of our young people, both from previous consultations. I asked when they achieve any particular endeavours or they do some work for us, like interviews or what have you, how would they best like to celebrate that? One would think that it would be bowling or going out and being together in some activity, and unanimously they said we would like a proper sit-down dinner like adults do. So that was taken forward, and then when we looked at the concept around actually celebrating education, that went back to another cohort of young people with a couple of options and choices. The event was actually informed by their views, and they chose not to walk across the podium, be clapped individually and singled out, but their names and their achievements and messages to them were called out. So they were semi-anonymous, and they absolutely loved hearing people speak of them without them having everybody staring at them. So we were very sensitive to that. Could you repeat the second question, please, Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, great. You've hit on my question really well so far. But the second part of the question was, and you've touched on it a little bit already. How did we did we record any feedback from the young people involved in the event? And you've already touched on to some extent that they were glad that they were not individually drawn upon. But if there's anything else you want to add on to that, that'd be great. So in particular, I'm looking at feedback from the event. Yeah.
Yeah, so a survey, an electronic survey voting poll went out to the young people. I'm really pleased to say that they didn't respond to it. And why I'm pleased to say that is they didn't go on their phones on the evening and start playing and doing the voting poll. They were talking to the VIPs and other young people that evening, which is really, really positive. They didn't hide away in their electronic devices. But anecdotally from team members, there's been a huge support for this again, and obviously we'll restart any consultations with the young people should we look to celebrate any future endeavours. And of course, as I mentioned in the paper, we will be looking at the achievements of all of our children and young people, not solely in education and not solely 16 plus. So we are starting a working group now and looking at opportunities for sponsorship so that not all of the money will come out of the council budget. And we will look at a sensible and appropriate way of celebrating all of our children and young people's achievements in whatever way they deem is appropriate and what manner we're able to do so within budget constraints. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Can I bring in Councillor Gebbie as a Cabinet member and then Claire as well, just to respond to your question?
Thanks very much, Chair. I suppose I want to reassure Councillor Thomas. This was an excellent learning opportunity for our young people. Some of the people that were sitting at my table had never been out for food and actually had to sit down and eat with a knife and fork properly in polite company, is what I want to say. It's something that we as parents would do as a matter of norm for our children and for our care experienced children. That's not necessarily something that they would do. McDonald's, I want to say, KFC is their request as a general rule. But I think this was a skills-based opportunity for them. And when they first came in, they were really, really nervous and anxious about actually sitting down at a table. And by the end, the conversations were so rich. I think that's what did it for me. And to say that I was in tears with a couple of our young people, I am so impressed with them. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gebbie. Claire, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think the event was actually very humbling for us. Some of us, dare I say, had been a little bit cynical before the event about whether this was actually the sort of event that our young people would want to go to. And you know that the event itself confounded, I think, all of that cynicism. We do need to build on it, because there were some young people who could have attended who didn't, because they weren't perhaps comfortable or nervous about coming into that environment. So we need to really ensure that our engagement is very deep and meaningful with all our young people, not just those who are more comfortable in engaging with us, because the outcome was just lovely. And we will learn and reflect and continue to do better, because what I'd like to see next year is probably double that number who could have attended, but some chose not to.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Thomas, did that answer your question? I know your hand's gone back up, but
yeah, it did. It did, Chair. Thank you for that. It did, Chair. But just wondering from Claire's comments then, how did we know that some children were reluctant to attend? Is that something we, from those who didn't turn up, did we go back to them or something like that? And also, I'm just trying to work out numbers of children young people, I should say, numbers of young people who engaged in the dinner out of a total number. How many were we expecting?
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So we were looking at a number of 78 young people initially. I must stress that we were not looking at GCSE, A-level and degree results. We were looking at all educational achievements. And for some of our young people, completing a course over the period of a year at entry level is a massive achievement, considering some of the obstacles, as Councillor Gebbie rightly said, the young people have overcome. Our workers worked tirelessly going to and fro during a period of short staffing, as you can imagine, during the summer period, trying to check out and encourage and explain to the young people what the event was about, where they would stand, who would be there, and what would go on. We were very conscious to encourage +1s to attend, and in many cases their +1s weren't just workers, they were also other young people who were care experienced who may not have achieved an education at this particular period, and we'd be looking to recognise them next year. So it was an ongoing dialogue. There were some people who dropped out last minute. We also had some people last minute say, "Oh, I've decided I'd like to come, please." So it was very much a constant communication from the get-go with regards to the young people. Some of them said, "It's just not my bag, I'm not interested." And for some of those young people, they had achieved very high as well. So it wasn't a case of embarrassment because of how they felt they hadn't done necessarily. It was down to personal choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Can I bring Councillor Bledsoe in, please?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Steve, as well, for a good report. It's a really good one. I do have a question on 3.1.3 and 3.1.4. In light of recent messages that have gone out across the council about spending and the fact that we are so far over budget at the moment, I just wondered if there is an expectation that the event on the 16th of February may well be cancelled as a consequence of the overspends. I wondered if we could also have a take on how much these events cost to put on. I also want to note as well that not every member of the parenting board was invited to this event. Some of us we didn't even receive an invitation. So it would have been nice to actually meet the children, that looked after young adults, and to celebrate their achievements. However, I do want to note as well that I'm a parent of 3 young adults myself, and they've gone through their GCSEs, their A-levels, various courses, university degrees, and at no point during that process for any of my children did I take them to a hotel, food and drink, have a magician, have a DJ, have a minister from the Welsh Government turn up. And I do wonder if we aren't putting unrealistic expectations in the minds of these young adults that this is how it is in the real world. It's not. Although we do want to look after our children and make sure that they do have a good future, when we're putting them into a situation where they might feel uncomfortable as well, is that the right thing to be doing? Because some of them didn't go because of the awkwardness and nervousness that they had around that. And would it not have been better to just teach them which knives and forks to use in a private setting away from an event like this? So I'm just wondering if we're not setting them up for a fall with these unrealistic expectations potentially, and is that correct to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Quite a lot there to respond to. Steve, could I bring in Councillor Gebbie as a cabinet member, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Bledsoe. The first thing I would say that all the cost was related to us. We had stakeholders that were involved in that as well. In relation to our DJ didn't play anything. He actually stood at a mic and did it all free of charge, and is more than happy to come to any event that we want to organise. One of the bits of feedback from our children was they didn't want a load of councillors there, so there wasn't a load of councillors there. Indeed, the cabinet, all of the cabinet wasn't there either, and they also sit on parenting boards and corporate parenting, etc. It was myself and the leader, and that was specifically because that's what the children asked for. It also meant that we limited costs, because every place that we offered would have been an additional cost. So we kept the costs quite down. If you want me to give you a figure, I'm sure I can investigate that and give you that after the meeting. That's what I want to say, because I haven't got it to hand. It's not information that I would even hold. And the other thing I would say is that even our young people were limited to the amount of, they brought a +1. That was it. So there wasn't a load of councillors there. There wasn't a load of dignitaries there. There was one stakeholder from each organisation that was involved in the event. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I could possibly ask for those breakdown of figures, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Steve, for the report. Very interesting read. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the care experience forums and the kind of work that they do, and I suppose the participation rate of the care experience cohort that we've got in Canterbury. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have TGP Cymru, which are our advocacy providers, and they run forums on a basis with regards to the regularity according to the availability of our young people. So the intention is that there should be one every month if they can. In some cases, we may have missed one a month, but then in the school holidays, not done sort of a 2-hour session, but actually done an all-day session. Within that, we are looking at it's a 3-pronged approach. So it might be issues that are raised by the actual corporate parenting board. It might be issues that are raised by Children's Services as a consultation to ask them what do they think happens in a LAC review, and how could that be improved, and how could the voice of the child be more engaged within fostering, for example. And then finally, in some ways most importantly, is their opportunity to raise their own project issues and drive forward some of the things that they want to do. So what the forum is currently working on is looking at a huge raft of information for care experienced young people. When you're in care, what are your rights? What can I do? What can't I do? What makes me different to another regular young person who's in the same school as me? Am I able to ask questions? If things are going wrong or I'm not happy, who do I speak to? What do I do? What if that social worker isn't around? Who else can I speak to? What if I don't like that foster carer? Is there someone else I can speak to? So there's a whole raft of questions that they're coming up and presenting the solutions with the workers, with myself and other professionals to pull together this information. We're hoping that this information will be all provided by December, and at that point we then need to decide how we'll present that information to make it accessible to other young people. So it might not be a website, it might not be a pamphlet, it has to be something that we know that will be palatable for all young people. So it probably will be in several different mediums. It might be poetry, it might be, media clips, all appropriate and safeguarding considered, obviously, because we don't want their faces exposed on the internet necessarily. But lots of rich information ongoing. With regards to appointments within the council, more especially social services, we have a panel of young people that is either on a rotation or whoever is interested in it. I provide training for those young people and explaining what applications and CVs people go through to actually get to the point of recruitment and selection. And then they sit on a panel which is parallel to the professional panel, and they do actually have a scoring process alongside the adult panel. They have a debrief with the adult panel and HR, and at that point the discussions are had as to whether a social worker, residential worker, deputy head of service is relevant as far as they are situated. So we recognise they're experts in their own experience, and that is being young people. So it's appropriate. And they have their boundaries within that, as we would as professionals in our own areas.
Thank you for that response. That was very
Mike.
Yeah, thank you for that response. That was very reassuring. It's just that the numbers of engagement, I suppose, that's the bit that I don't know. What percentage of the people, young people, engage? And I suppose then the question is, depending on that answer, then how accessible is the forum to everyone? Where do we meet, and how do they actually get there?
Well, if we think of... Sorry, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. With regards to a paper survey and asking somebody to respond, generally speaking, it's a 5% response. With regards to participation face-to-face, it's around 12%. When it comes to care experienced young people, nationally, I'm not talking about Wales, I'm talking about the UK, numbers considerably drop because of the stigma attached to young people talking about their own care experiences. And secondly, there's also the issues of what is going on in their lives in any case. So there are a lot of boundaries and barriers to young people's participation. Myself and the youth worker and TGP are very, very aware of those, with over 50 years experience put together of working in different participation arenas and different target groups, hard to reach groups. So it's very much led by the young people, where they want to meet, how they want to meet. Do they want to meet online? Do they want letter writing? Do they want to do it on Teams? Do they want face-to-face? Is it in a formal setting? Is it in a restaurant? Wherever they see fit. So it is very organic, I would say. We wanted it to be in the midweek, in the evening, after school. It has worked like that, but the most positive engagement we've had are in school holidays over at Halo for a whole day, where we provide them with a bite to eat and a little bit of space to just chill out and not all be work, and then just have time with their friends. So that's the most, so we've probably got about 40 on roll that have been involved, but that number changes and it's not always the same people. So people dip in and out, but we're constantly recruiting through fostering, through kinship carers, through the 16+ team care experience team, residential, and we're also very aware that some people might wish to engage, but individually and not be part of the group, and we also tap into those resources. But I will say, and it is a thing, having spoken to many youth workers across Wales, since COVID epidemic, young people's engagement in groups has massively declined. And that's one of those things that has been an outcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Councillor Howell. Councillor Blundell, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I will second the report, as I don't think that's happened yet, just to get that out of the way first. No, my comment really, it's not a question, it is more of a comment, because it's just to emphasise what Steve said a bit earlier. It's about celebrating any achievement. I know as a child, my parents would take me to celebrate things, SATs results, GCSE results, A-level results, went up a grade in Sea Cadets. Those little things you celebrate, those little milestones you celebrate, and these children don't often get that, or at all. So I think this was a fantastic event. I know the DEP has spoken about it a number of times in this meeting and outside of how special she found that moment, and as did the leader. So I think this is just one of those things where we celebrate those young people's achievements, whatever they are, whatever their journey is, we celebrate that, because otherwise, not for many of them, they wouldn't have had that. So I think for me, that's a really important thing that Steve said there that I think needs to be emphasised through this report. So After I second the report, I'll then go away. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. Can I just can we just record that the deputy leader and the leader have left now to attend another meeting? And yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Blundell. I've always at the end of the year celebrated with my children, even if it's just like a pizza takeaway. But it's just to make them think, you know, if you work harder and increase your grade, then this is what. Yeah. So I've always celebrated little milestone with my boys. Can I bring in Councillor Jonathan Pratt, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor Blundell sort of stole my thunder. I've always done this as a child. My parents have taken me out. They've asked what I've wanted to do. It's been quite normal for me in my lifetime. As I've got older, I've stopped celebrating things. I didn't celebrate my degree, but then I graduated during lockdown. So it was a bit difficult to go out, but it's normal, and it is not just education. It's got to be life achievements as well. But I think Councillor Gebbie said it as well. This is also a teaching moment. You know, that this is how you sit down to eat a meal. Something I certainly have taken for granted growing up, because I taught it from an early age with my parents. So, you know, when they go into adult life, that, you know, these kind of functions, if they are successful in life, it are going to become the norm. So it's best to teach them now where they can make mistakes rather than making mistakes in adult life. So, you know, it is vastly important. And, you know, if cost becomes an issue, I'm sure the council can look for sponsors locally across businesses to assist with those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Yeah, I think the deputy did say that there were other agencies that contributed towards the other cost. So thank you. I can't see anybody else with their hands up for any questions. The report's been passed and seconded. Are we all in agreement, please? Aye. Thank you. Aye. Thank you very, very much. We'll move on to item number 5 now, please, which is housing pathway for care experience.
Chair, I believe your mic's off.
Apologies. I apologise. I thought I took it on. Councillor Thomas, is this in for the next report or the report we were just discussing? For the next one.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Right at the start, it was remiss of me. I should have declared an interest in this item. I've got a personal interest. My employment is with a membership body that represents the interests of property agents. So I thought I'd better declare that.
Thank you. Councillor Bletser, your hands have gone down. Is it for the next report?
No, sorry, it's entirely my fault. I missed it. But on the previous item, yeah, I just wanted clarity on the part about picking somebody to sit. Sorry, I'm very sorry about this. I've lost the item again.
Fine. Don't worry. Okay.
It's on 3.2.2. My apologies. I know it's a task and finish group that's had appointees to it, and I just wondered, as a task and finish group, just for clarity, there doesn't have to be political balance, does there? Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I'll pass it on to somebody who can advise us.
Thank you, Chair. This is purely an officer operational meeting, and with stakeholder agencies as well. Thank you.
Because it says that a representative has to sit on it. We have to pick one. So I presume it's picked from the board, Steve. Sorry.
Apologies. With regards to the board, the board representation is of officers. The only, with exception to yourself, the actual. So we're not talking about corporate cabinets committee. We're talking about the corporate parenting board. There aren't any political politicians on that group, with exception to the deputy leader, who is chair, and I believe yourself, who's there under a different guise of the organisation that you represented. Is that correct?
No, I don't know if we're talking about the same group. There's a task and finish group.
No. Okay. Apologies. So it's a task and finish group out of the corporate parenting board. So it's purely officers and stakeholder professionals from other organisations.
Yeah,
no other councillors.
Right, I'm really confused. I'll pick this up with you after, because I'm really confused. It does say that we have to nominate a representative from this board, so I'm really confused by that, but I'll pick it up after. That's not a problem. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
If you pick that up, Councillor Bledsoe, with Steve, and then we can bring it back if there's any issues, yeah? Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Moving on to item 5, I keep forgetting my mic. Housing pathways for care experienced children and the young people. I'll now ask the group manager to present the report. Is that?
It's Jade.
Pete?
Jade.
Jade is here. I've got Pete on my list. Jade, can I hand over to you, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just to give an outline of the report, it's to outline the accommodation pathways available to care experienced young people and care leavers from the age of 16 plus. So the report is to update Corporate Parenting Committee on the progress of work from a paper that was taken by Housing in March 2022, and to provide information on care leavers pathway, including how many children are on the current waiting list for permanent accommodation. So in the background section, it talks about Welsh Government requires local authorities to look at their corporate parenting response in relation to care experienced children and young people and their future accommodation needs. Work was undertaken by Housing and Children's Services to identify and progress on actions which are under the themes of corporate outcomes, commissioning, joint working and projecting need, and the experience of children, young people. To support the work, area planning group meetings were established, and a theme under the area planning group is specifically looking at children leaving care. A work stream under the group with colleagues from Children's Social Care and Housing, a meeting at the beginning of October 2023. The current situation, there's a care leavers accommodation framework which was superseded from the former framework in 2016. The framework aims to support local authorities to support transition for young people into adulthood. The framework is in place to help local authorities think and plan and work through, and the purpose of the framework is flexibility and to make sure that nobody falls through the gaps and that nobody experiences homelessness. It also acknowledges that care leavers are amongst the group likely to be at more risk of homelessness than others, and that they need support from their corporate parents throughout and beyond this transition. So in terms of accommodation pathways, there's a statutory duty to provide suitable accommodation for care experienced children and care leavers up to the age of 16, and the pathway in relation to this is robust. Inclusive of care leavers over the age of 18, young people are entitled to support, and this includes support to find suitable accommodation, which we rely on our partners to support these areas. The pathway and options within this area are not as effective or as robust as those under the age of 18, sorry. On leaving care, children exercise their rights, so they may want to return home, move in with partners. Some progress onto higher education and stay in university halls, and some look to live independently and may try and obtain accommodation through the private rented sector or through the Common Housing Register, but it's extremely challenging in these areas. Young people can access a range of accommodation options. So there's foster care, when I'm ready, residential, returning home or living with connected persons. We commission supported accommodation and semi-independent options, children's social care, commission these, and we host a supported lodging service, and there's also a specialist scheme for 18 to 21 for children with complex or additional needs. So some of the challenges, our care experience children population remains high. 10 to 15-year-olds are the largest proportion of this population, and despite the range of accommodations already discussed, demand still outweighs capacity, and there's no safety net post 18, which can result in homelessness. We're also part of a mandated national transfer scheme, and the majority of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are 16 plus, and their needs have primarily been met within supported accommodation. But due to the immigration status and no recourse to public funds, we find that there's lengthier stays within these types of services, which impacts on availability. Many of our care leavers return home or move in with friends and partners, and subsequently some of these relationships can break down. And I think this sort of correlates with the information from the housing support strategy, which outlines that care leavers aren't presenting as homeless straight after 18, but on average within the first 2 years, so 19 years and 7 months. Lots of our care leavers apply through social housing as their only option for future move on, and with the pressures that housing are currently under and the rapid rehousing programme, there's a lot of lengthy wait for children to access more settled accommodation. This isn't optimal, as it means care leavers are delayed in living independently, and from a financial perspective, it's not good use of scarce resource either. These challenges are shared amongst temporary and supported accommodation services across the council, and data collection and information on children leaving care is particularly challenging between the ages of 18 to 25, and there's no integration of information systems between housing and social care systems to identify. As a snapshot, at the point of time this report was written, a total number of 6 young people across our commission services and internal services were waiting for permanent settled accommodation. In addition to this, 3 referrals were also, 3 young people were requiring 24-hour supported provision, but there was no vacancies available. And 1 young person had been served notice from a When I'm Ready placement. I think we recognise, there's recognition that many of our care leavers have experienced extreme adverse childhood experiences and quite often need intensive support and sometimes therapy whilst in our care to help them make sense and overcome the short, medium and long term, and presenting as homeless is a detriment on a young person's well-being. Within the area planning group, there are work streams, as I've already mentioned, that are looking at trying to find some solution to these challenges outlined in this report. We'll be meeting monthly to look at areas around commissioning joint work and projecting need and the experience for young people. The recommendation to this report is to note the information contained in the report and the further work required, and give consideration to the priority given to care experienced children in line with the corporate parenting responsibilities when reviewing the social housing allocation policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jade, for that report. Can I bring Councillor Good in first, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jade, for taking us through the report. I've got a couple of questions, but with the Chair's indulgence, I'll start with one and we can come back to others because I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to know in 3.9 of the report, it mentions quite a large population of children aged between 10 and 15 who are care experienced within the borough currently. And I was just wondering if we'd done any mapping in terms of sort of extrapolating what the future need for housing would be from that cohort.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Jade?
Yeah, we've got a placement commissioning strategy, and I suppose we project over a period of time that information is shared with our colleagues in housing and outlined in quite a few strategies in terms of that projection of need over the future years.
I'm going to ask Claire to answer that, please.
Yeah, so I've got to go back. Apologies, I turned the wrong mic on. I turned the mic on my Teams instead of the mic on the desk. So just to build on what Jade said there, there's some key documents. We've got something called a market stability report, which was approved by Council in July, I think, 2022. If I've got it right, it might have been 2021, so I'll clarify for that for the minutes, which is a regional document which looks at the needs of our population projecting forward over 5 years, and then identifies the gaps in terms of accommodation, care and support for children and young people. That's also reflected in the placement commissioning strategy which Jade referred to, and we'll be bringing forward our population-based commissioning strategies into Scrutiny Committee in November, into Scrutiny Committee 2 as part of their remit. What all of this projection identifies, given the number of care experienced children who will become care leavers, is significant gaps in terms of need for supported accommodation, the need to grow schemes such as When I'm Ready, the need to grow supported lodgings, which is really very small here in Bridgend. Critical to that is the move on, because part of the challenge that we face is the fact that supported accommodation can get blocked for want of a better term, really, for that, in that our aim obviously is to support our young people to live independently and without support. And because of the challenge we've got in terms of access to general needs accommodation, and because they're not actually homeless at that time, they are safe within that supported accommodation, other people take then priority under the allocation scheme. And so there is a risk that we could end up investing badly by creating more supported accommodation than we actually need for want of that move through. So I think these are key issues for us to consider corporately and as a Cabinet Corporate Parenting Board, in terms of that move on, as well as the total quantum of accommodation. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. That is a really important point, isn't it? Is we got a plan for that move on as they become adults. Can I bring Councillor Bledsoe?
Chair, sorry, before you bring Councillor Bledsoe in, it was very remiss of me, and I haven't moved the report. So could I formally move the report, please?
Thank you.
And then Councillor Bledsoe can come in.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Sorry, Councillor Bledsoe, would you like to come in now?
No, that's fine. That's not a problem. So I've got 3 questions on the report. So if I can just go through one, get an answer, and then do the other 2, if that's okay, Chair. So the first one is on 3.12, and it's about the lack of move-on facilities. Now, I'm not aware of the actual figures involved with costs that it costs to the authority with having our looked after children not able to go onto the CHR, and therefore we're having to take on that burden for longer. So I'm not aware of what those costs are. I'm going to caveat this with that. But I did just wonder if we'd had a look at, because I'm aware of the private rental sector and the fact that there's so few properties there, and finding a property whereby the landlord would look at perhaps a professional couple or a care leaver and would choose the private couple, professional couple over a care leaver, which is wrong. We know that. I'm just wondering if it had been looked at with the local housing allowance rate, whether we could top that up to make our care leavers more attractive to the private rental landlord and balance that inequality out. And would that be a cheaper option for us to do that top up on that local housing allowance rate than keeping them on in properties and blocking those properties, which in essence, it's like bed blocking at the hospital, isn't it? So I'm just wondering if that had been looked at all and if it would be a viable option as my first question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Ryan, are you able to answer that question, please?
I can do from a kind of general housing or homelessness perspective. I suppose I'd be looking at Jane and Claire to answer from a social services perspective. From a housing perspective, topping up LHA rates is not something we've kind of committed to. We're dealing with, as probably many across the room will know, and reports have gone to Cabinet recently, we're dealing with unprecedented demands in terms of temporary accommodation and numbers on the Common Housing Register. I think topping up the LHA rate from a housing perspective is something that if we were going to do it, we'd probably have to look to do it for those in homelessness, temporary accommodation, those in Airbnbs, B&Bs, and whilst in terms of a short-term position, I can understand the logic of topping up those costs. It's not sustainable. There's got to be a sustainability element to it. How long do you top them up for? If it was a short term, say 6 months top up, you're essentially just kicking the can down the road if the affordability is not there longer term down the line. I think there's also a wider point to top ups, which has been discussed in other forums. For example, around Ukraine refugee schemes, it's been discussed at Welsh Government level. It essentially is inflating or helping to continue to inflate the market, which is a concern. As Councillor Bledsoe has referred to, really the private rent sector market has significantly dwindled over the last few years. House prices, rent prices have increased massively. I think if the local authority were to step in and start offering LHA top-ups, there would be a real risk of helping to continue to inflate that market. That's not to say that I think, you know, it's not something that can be considered in small circumstances, and possibly for care leavers, that's something that could be considered with the social services colleagues. But I think there's got to be a sustainability element to it, would be my word of caution more than anything.
Which is reasonable, yeah.
Chair, do you mind if I come in as the Cabinet member?
I was going to ask you after Claire, though. I was going to let Claire speak first, and I was going to bring you in as a Cabinet member for housing. Claire first.
I wonder if Chair, perhaps Councillor Good should come in first, and then I'll supplement if needed.
Okay, go on, Councillor Good.
We're all being very courteous today. Thank you, Claire. You know, I think it's just to say, I think we all recognise, and something I meant to say in my first contribution, of course, is we can't forget that we have over 250 families, which include a lot of children who aren't part of the corporate parenting world, but are children in temporary accommodation currently within the borough. And that is something I think, you know, we would be remiss to forget about. But to Councillor Bledsoe's point around the LHAs, I think we're all aware that actually the LHA currently doesn't meet the level that actually rental now requires in the private rental sector. That is something that more widely, as a Cabinet, we have taken to Welsh Government and to the UK Government to say, you know, at the end of the day, the rates that we currently can offer people to go into private rental is not touching the sides at this point. No. So, you know, I think it's a far wider problem than, as Ryan says, than just looked after children, but in fact it's across our housing need that actually LHAs currently don't meet the need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Claire?
Yeah, so the only things that I wanted to add is just to provide some assurance to Councillor Bledsoe that care experienced children, care leavers can access the Common Housing Register, so they do apply via the Common Housing Register. But because of the challenges which Councillor Good and Ryan have outlined, in common with everybody else, really, it can be a long wait in terms of obtaining the accommodation that they want. And I suppose what we're highlighting through this report is that then that's an over-reliance in some cases, and they're relatively small numbers, aren't they? So the 314 of the report highlights that there are 6 people in commissioned accommodation who could move on. And I suppose what we're highlighting then, there's a risk that we over-support and we develop more supported accommodation, which is more costly than if we were to be able to have that move through. So it's really considering from a policy perspective whether there is anything about a relatively small number of young people that could be taken forward. I just wanted to provide that clarification. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you,
Claire. Councillor Bledsoe, did that answer your question? I think you said you had a couple more questions. Did you want to ask them now?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And if I can come on to my second question, which kind of feeds into this as well. I just wanted clarity on 3.10 about the unaccompanied asylum seekers children national transfer scheme that we have. Is this a statutory duty that we have to undertake? Is it something that's mandated from Westminster? Is it something that's not statutory? I don't quite know where we are with that. Sorry.
I'll hand over to Claire to answer that one.
Yeah, it is a statutory responsibility, Councillor Bledsoe, from the Home Office. So all local authorities across the UK are required and mandated is the term under the National Transfer Scheme to take our share of unaccompanied asylum seeking children under the National Transfer Scheme, and the numbers are significantly increasing.
Yes, I noted that. Right, thank you. And then my third question is on 3.8. It's about the Timor supported service. I just wondered how many care leavers have accessed this service in the last 12 months. Again, is this a statutory service or is it one that we provide? And do we have costs on how much that costs for a child to go through that service, or a young person to go through that service, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Claire, you can have that one.
I don't have the exact costs and numbers. Jade may, but I think you're shaking your head, Jade.
I know we've got Caris in, haven't we? So maybe.
So we will get you those exact costs after the meeting, Councillor Bledsoe. So this is a service which we provide ourselves as a local authority. It's a very innovative service, actually, that lots of other parts of Wales don't have. And has been very successful in terms of the outcomes for young people who are care experienced. We do benefit from a Welsh Government innovation grant, which significantly underpins the revenue of that service. And if we get you all of the financial breakdown, rather than estimating exactly how much that grant is, but that grant is absolutely critical to the running and revenue costs of that service.
Because I fully appreciate we've had this conversation, obviously, in my committee about putting forward innovative projects that stop those costs escalating down the road, even though it's not a statutory undertaking. So I do fully understand that. So thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Can I bring in Councillor Blundell, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is on 3.13. It's in 3 parts, but there are only 3 easy parts. So if you'll indulge me, Chair. Obviously, it mentions about how it's challenging to keep track of 1825. I can understand probably why, but could you just outline some of the challenges around that? How are we currently tracking them as well? And also, are we talking to other local authorities about if there's they found a better way of tracking, because as you say, it's challenging, and obviously we need to make sure our numbers are as fairly accurate as possible. And then afterwards, if I like the answers, I might second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Blundell, who's going to take that?
I'll take that, and Jade may add in if I don't get this completely right. So we've got a 16+ team. So care leavers, we have all got or the opportunity to have a personal assistant employed through that 16+ team. The reason it's challenging is that some care leavers will reach the age of 18 and decide that they don't want to engage with us any longer for whatever reason. That is their right. But that opportunity to re-engage is always open to the care leaver. That makes the numbers quite challenging, but we do make every effort through that team to work with our care leavers and to provide them whatever ongoing support that they need. We've obviously got the basic income pilot in Wales, which is another, I suppose, innovative policy from Welsh Government, which is focused on care experienced care. Young people, our care leaving population. That's quite a good incentive, isn't it, for care leavers to want to keep in touch with us as a local authority. And also some of the idea around that scheme is to support care leavers with things like bonds for housing and to perhaps make up the difference between local housing allowance, recognising how challenging that is. In terms of sharing good practice with other local authorities, regular discussions through the All Wales Heads of Children's Services on a regional basis. We work very closely with RCT and Merthyr to share what we're doing and to understand what they're doing. I think that the challenges around access to housing permanently are not unique by any stretch of the imagination to this authority. It's probably one of the biggest challenges across public services at the moment.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Blundell, does that answer your question?
It does, and I will happily second the report, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I bring Councillor Howell-Williams in, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jade, for the report. My question is on 3.5, and that it reminds us that local authorities have a statutory duty to provide suitable accommodation for care experienced children. So I'm just wondering if our social housing grant is weighted towards this provision, and are we working with developers then to provide the accommodation that will meet our requirements?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Who's going to answer this one? Yes, please, Keris, thank you.
Thank you for that. It's a very interesting question, actually. I think you'll see in some of the papers that have come out recently about housing.
Sorry, Keris, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm Keris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. In some of the papers that we've recently brought through Cabinet, we've outlined that we've seen a significant increase in the number of single persons seeking accommodation, which is a very different demographic to what we had prior to COVID. And I would suggest that this cohort would probably sit within that demographic. We are doing everything we can to extend our housing supply across the board. We actually had a very interesting first meeting of our Housing Strategic Partnership this week, and some of our partners in the social landlord area have done some very innovative work around accommodation, actually particularly for young people, and they're going to come and talk to us about that in more detail to see how they did it, how it was funded, and whether or not it's a suitable model that we could lift and bring into Bridgend. And certainly where we can use our social housing grant to do that, then we would do. You'll also be aware that we are currently consulting about our homelessness provision and what we need going forward. And I suppose the priorities that come out of that consultation will be considered and fed through into how we then focus our monies. And I would suggest that's the reason for the second recommendation on this morning's report, really, is to raise the importance of this cohort of small number but important cohort of young people who are looking for accommodation.
Thank you, Keris. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Councillor Good, you did have your hand up. It seems to have disappeared. I think you've frozen. So I'll go to Councillor Pratt next then, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a shame Councillor Good is frozen, really, because I think he may be best to answer this. Obviously, we're looking at housing for care leavers as adults. Obviously, the UBI scheme is still ongoing, as far as I understand, as a pilot for 24 months. If the Welsh Government chooses not to continue with the UBI scheme, what is BCBC doing to prepare for a loss of around £19,000 per care leaver, because that's surely going to impact on their ability to pay rent, and is there a strategy for that if the Welsh Government ceases to continue with the pilot? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt. Unfortunately, Councillor Good is frozen. So Claire or Keris?
Yeah, I'll come in on that if I may. I think, again, I'll refer to the work of the 16 plus team, the PAs who work with care leavers. Their whole role in Raising DETRA is to prepare and support care leavers to be able to live in, dare I say it, the real world, in terms of access to education, employment, training, to work with all parts of the council to support care leavers to be able to support themselves. I think that the basic income pilot intention is to give a boost for those couple of years to care leavers, and obviously that will be evaluated. I think Cardiff University have been commissioned by Welsh Government to undertake an independent evaluation of the impact of the scheme. But our frontline workforce who work every day with care leavers are very cognizant about preparing those care leavers for when that basic income comes to an end.
Did that answer you, Councillor Pratt?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so the report's been moved and seconded. I know Councillor Good did want to ask another question. He did say at the beginning. So if that's okay, I will allow him to ask that question when he comes back, if that's okay. But in the meantime, do we approve the report, please? I move. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Good is back. Councillor Good, did you want to add?
I've been here all along, Chair. I'm perfectly fine. Don't worry about my questions. Just let's move on.
Are you okay for that? You were very still. I think Councillor Bledsow's frozen as well, it seems, on my screen.
I'm still here.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item 6, Foster Wales Bridge End update. We were due to have a presentation, but I understand that's been postponed now for another time. So I'll hand over to Alex, who's going to present the report. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I have prepared a report today to give you an update on our developments in Foster Wales, providing a bit of context about our placement situation and some feedback then about the engagement sessions that we've completed with our foster carers and our care experience team. Also just given a little bit of an update on where we are with our recruitment and our achievements in terms of gaining special guardianship orders for care experience children, and then a little bit of context into how our team are doing with the rollout. Very happy to have the lovely feedback from our consultant about how my team have adopted this to date, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. That was a very quick report. Do we have any questions, please? No? Could I have a mover and a seconder then, please?
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second as well, Chair.
Thank you. So if there are no questions, can we accept the report, please? Okay, thank you very, very much. I don't have any urgent items on the agenda, so if that is all, can I thank you very, very much for your attendance and for really good questions. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.